Good morning, Glen. Am I on? Oh, yeah. Good morning, Glenvale. It is so good to be here. Who's been blessed already? I've been blessed already. You've got a beautiful worship team, a beautiful space here on the hill. Beautiful autumn day, the weather, the sun is shining. It is good to worship together, is it not? I just want to take a little minute to share with you a little bit about me and what I do, because there are faces here that I know and have seen before, and there are faces that I don't know. So I don't want to be a stranger here today, so a little bit about me. My name is Daniella. I am part of a church support and development team, South Queensland Conference Office, and on the screen you'll see some faces. That's the team that I belong to. It's a pretty cool team. I'm very blessed to work with these amazing people. You'll see on your left, you'll see Greg Pratt. I'm sure most of you have met him at some sometime. He's everywhere. He's our leader, and he's over everything. He's an awesome man of God. Below Greg, we've got Trevor Moore. Trevor is our ministerial secretary, and so his job is primarily focused on pastors and supporting, encouraging, and just helping them in their ministry. On the other side, you've got Rick and Christos, and I'm sure you've met, if you're a younger person, you would definitely have met them. Their primary focus is young people and youth. So that looks anything like from adventurers, pathfinders. I know you've got some really great clubs here at Glenvale, youth, young adult ministry, all sorts of things like that. They are constantly busy. Hardly ever see them. They're everywhere, but they have such a heart, God's heart for young people, and it's really great to be part of ministry with this bunch. And also down the bottom is Anita. You've probably seen her around the place. We also have another member of our team, Olivia, who is a little bit camera shy, so I don't have a photo of her. One day I'm going to get a photo of her because she's amazing. Together, Anita and Liv are our admin support. And our event coordinators, and they're the glue that hold all this together. And so all of the events and stuff that you see from the conference run through Liv and Anita, and they're just amazing women who we're just so blessed to work with. Myself there in the corner is, obviously I'm Daniella, and my focus area is women's ministries. And so that looks like taking care of, encouraging, supporting, equipping, whatever that might look like for women in local church. And so people like your beautiful Pamela, who I can't see, but I did see her today, she's here, running local ministry for local women in your church. Also, it could also include pastors' wives and people who, pastoral families, it's tough, let's be honest, and unless you're in that boat, it can be really tough. So I love to come alongside the significant others in our pastoral team and just love and care and support for them as well. We have a number of female pastors and chaplains in our conference, and I'm so proud of them. They are just God-filled women of God, and I love to come alongside and support and encourage and just love them in their ministry and the way that they lead churches. So that's some of the things that we all do, and as a team, we're here to equip, support, encourage, and just come alongside local church ministry, because we're very aware that this is right where it happens. And so it's so good to be here with you today and share with you. Sorry, Toowoomba, I've forgotten what the allergies are like. I used to live here, for those of you who don't know me. This is my old stomping ground. This is my old church. Back before it was here, it was Westridge. There's still a few Westridge people out here. And so I was baptised and we were married and our kids were dedicated. And so this is a big part of our family history here in Toowoomba. So I just want to update a little bit now. About 14 years later, 14 years ago we left Toowoomba. This is my family now. On the back there you'll see my husband Graham. He is a pastor and he's pastoring currently Eden's Landing Church, South Brisbane. And doing ministry together is pretty special. And so being also a pastor's wife, I get what ministry is like for any pastors in the house. You'll see at the front there next to me is our girl Jessica. We love her to bits. She's currently working down in Central Coast. She has just graduated at the end of last year from a degree in counselling, and so she's currently working at a beautiful little clinic that is a safe space for women and children. Women and children to come, and she does counselling in that. So really proud of her. On the back there, you'll see our son Blake. They just grow up, don't they? I've seen so many here that I remember from this big, so it's really cool to see. But yes, he and his wife Nadine are currently just have moved back to South Queensland area, and they are currently living in Ipswich. And Blake is the intern pastor at Ipswich Church. So he's just starting his ministerial role and journey, and He's been challenged and yet really loving his space there at Ipswich. Ipswich has been a great church, right? So good to see you, Lene. So that's a little bit about me and my family, and I'm just really grateful to be here with you today and share. Just want to talk a little bit about the armour of God. My theme that I've set for women's ministry this year is the armour of God. It's something that I've just loved diving into over the past 12 months and just unpacking it. And it's so powerful, and it's an untapped resource that I hope by the end of today that you will just feel challenged, but you'll also feel encouraged, because it's something that we can also implement in our lives. He would grow up to be the world's most legendary military commanders. Born into an era of tyrants and brutality, Alexander the Great used the exceptional education that he received and channeled it to marshal his forces into nearly impossible battles. He emerged victorious over the course of 13 years of battles and forged one of the largest empires of the world. He was a military genius who used trickery, innovation, and creative thinking to defeat often vastly superior armies. Alexander's audacity, courage, and strategic brilliance have led some to consider that he was possibly one of the world's first superheroes. Where to put that? One of his greatest assets was his ability to respond very rapidly to the changing conditions in battlefield. Alexander was arrogant and controlling. He believed in his own superiority and dominance. He plotted, he schemed, and he watched his enemy to find cracks in their ranks. And he was willing to risk everything in order to conquer and grow his kingdom. He waged hand-to-hand combat battles. He besieged cities until he conquered them. He burned villages and cities to the ground. He did whatever it took to win. Ephesians 6:11 and 12 says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armour of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms." You know, we have an enemy. It's not Alexander the Great, but it's an enemy that is scheming and plotting against us. An enemy that is watching, observing, and learning everything there is to know about you. This enemy is invisible and yet nonetheless very real. Let's not forget that. Because we don't visibly see this enemy, we often find ourselves in a state of mistaken identity. A mistaken identity in that we're fighting against flesh and blood. We mistakenly assess that the enemy is our neighbour. You know, that one that's just really loud and that plays that music at all hours of the night. You know, that neighbour, just obnoxious. Or maybe our co-worker, you know, that one that just pushes your buttons and you're like, if they say one more thing. Maybe it's that person at church, the one a couple rows in front. You know, they think, oh man. We mistakenly think that the enemy is our spouse because just the things that have been said, the things that they always do, the way that we just grate against each other, that person is clearly the enemy, right? For our struggle is not against flesh and blood. One of my favourite stories in the Bible is in the Old Testament. It's found in 2 Kings chapter 6. It's about a servant who was discouraged and, quite frankly, terrified about the situation that he found himself in. The city that Gehazi and Elisha were in was completely surrounded by enemy soldiers. And as he stood on that city wall, all he could see was the enemy. All he could see was the city completely surrounded by enemy soldiers. The glare from the sun reflecting off the swords and the helmets was just almost blinding. The sound of the horses snorting and stomping around was really intimidating. The sound of swords clanging while soldiers practiced their battle skills was terrifying and heart-stopping. Everything, the whole situation was just incredibly overwhelming for Gehazi. He was standing on this wall. They were fully surrounded. And just then Elisha, the prophet, walks in. And while Gehazi is just explaining to Elisha about the situation they're in and how they're totally surrounded and they're most certainly going to absolutely 100% going to die, there is no way out. Elisha prays. And he prays one of the most simple and yet powerful prayers. Lord, open his eyes so that he can see. If you haven't read this story, I'd encourage you to go to 2 Kings chapter 6 and read this story. I love it. Lord, open his eyes so that he can see. And the Bible tells us, then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw hills full of horses and chariots of fire everywhere. Whose horses and chariots of fire did he see? It was God's army. God's army was there the whole time. But Gehazi, he was only looking at the visible. He was only looking at the things that he could see. He only saw defeat, loss, devastation. If I were your enemy, I would want you to be distracted. Distracted with all of those things that you see that overwhelm you. All those things that send you into a panic. If I were your enemy, I would want to distract you so you don't really see what's going on. Open our eyes so that we can truly see. You know, the strategy of a well-trained, highly dangerous enemy is all about deception and distraction. After all, that's how Alexander the Great won most of his battles. Illusions and lies are what fuels every attack. And so often we don't see it. Our eyes are not open. And just like Elisha's servant Gehazi standing on that wall, we don't see what's really going on. I just forgot something. Thank you. Just this one. Who's got a set of these at home? Who's got a set? Have you got a snorkel set? Do you love to snorkel? I love to snorkel. My whole family loves to snorkel. We've spent years and years, even when the kids were really little, they picked up the whole snorkeling concept really well. We've gone to so many amazing places and we've snorkeled and seen some absolutely incredible fish, big fish that just like scared Graham to death. Other little fish, beautifully coloured fish, really plain fish, coral, the life and colour under the surface of the water is absolutely spectacular. But you know what? You don't get to see it unless you put this on. Because if you're just in the boat and you're just looking at the water, sometimes you see a little bit. Sometimes you see the big fish, maybe the ones with teeth on them. But you don't really get to see all the details. You don't get to see the little fish. You don't get to see the colours. You don't get to swim with them. It's quite something else when you actually put on your snorkel gear and you put your head under the water. Because all of a sudden the whole new world becomes crystal clear. You know, we're surrounded with enemy soldiers who are out to kill, steal, and destroy. But, and here's the good part, there is a big fat but, and that is really special. But there is good news. There is life-saving news, news that will change your whole life. News that will give you hope that there is a better way, a way that will allow you to live in freedom and victory. Ephesians 6:13 says, therefore, because our struggle is not with flesh and blood, that neighbour, that other person at church, our spouse, our work colleague, because our struggle is not with flesh and blood, because it's bigger than that. Because of all this, put on the full armour of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. After you have done everything. It seems like it's saying to me that I need to do something. It seems like I'm being told that there is a solution for the problem that I find myself in. Therefore, put on the full armour of God and then stand firm. Because after you have fully armed yourself, you can stand. The full armour of God. The belt of truth buckled firmly around your waist. The breastplate of righteousness firmly in place. Your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. The shield of faith, with which we can extinguish the flaming darts of the evil one. And take the helmet of salvation. The sword of the Spirit, which is, we heard this in our children's story, what is the sword of the Spirit? It's the word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions, with all kinds of prayers and requests. And with this in mind, with all of this that we've just talked about, with all of this in mind, be alert. The full armour. Imagine. You're going to have a good imagination for this, and I know you'll be fine with this. I'm a fully trained soldier. I know, that's where your imagination comes in. It's coming to a big battle. I am a seasoned warrior. I've had many years of battle experience. I understand the enemy tactics and schemes, and I have vast knowledge of how the enemy works and how he targets his attacks. I train regularly, I work out, I am conscious about what I put into my body. I only eat healthy foods. I do all the right things to care for myself and prepare myself for battle. Battle day arrives. I put on my helmet. I fix my shoes perfectly in place. I've got my girdle secured. I pick up my sword and my shield. But I go into battle without my breastplate on. All it would take is for one arrow to come hurling through the air, and I would lose my life. right there on the battlefield. That would be the end. You see, each piece of armour matters. Each piece plays a life-saving role for protecting my life. When my helmet is in place and I have confidence in my salvation, but if I don't pick up my shield of faith and I don't live daily in the assurance that God gives me, I'm choosing not to act in accordance with truth, I am not fully equipped for battle. Or if I'm carrying my sword, which is what? The Word of God. I'll ask you another question. Which is the Word of God. But if I don't have on my shoes of peace and live and walk accordingly, I become stuck. I am not equipped for battle and I cannot expect victory. I cannot expect to survive. The most amazing thing is that each of these pieces of armour work together. Each piece of armour supports each other piece of armour and backs it up. Does anyone in the house enjoy fishing? I was actually expecting more. Not much fishermen up here? There's no water. Oh, Lindsay, there's no water. Down on the Gold Coast, everyone fishes. I'm not good at fishing. I don't even like fishing. If I'm honest, it's boring and it's disgusting. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about that. And I don't even eat fish. But I know people who love fishing and who are really good at it, and they actually catch fish. So I have it on good authority that apparently it's all about the bait you use and the time that you go fishing. Is that right, Maddie? Yeah, you catch fish. You catch stingrays too, right? It's all about the bait and the timing. You know, our enemy is a master fisherman. He's studied you. He's been watching you and learning all about you. And he has selected the right bait just for you. And he's ready for the right time to snag you. You know, most of the time, the reason he snags us is because we make his job too easy. We just aren't prepared. We aren't paying attention. We're just like little fish swimming around doing our fishy thing. And then we see this fish and we're like, oh, fish. And before we know it, we've fallen into his trap. There are two things that I want to ask you to ask yourself today. I want you to challenge yourself, be honest. Question 1. In what ways do I pose the biggest threat to the enemy? In what ways do I pose the biggest threat to the enemy? Because that is where he'll attack. And that is where you need to pay closest attention. Anticipate that your enemy will attack you in the area of your greatest influence. Where do you pose the biggest threat to the enemy? The second question I want you to ask yourself today: what are my tendencies, passions, and weaknesses? What are your tendencies, passions, and weaknesses? Because this is where the enemy will exploit. He will attack you at your most vulnerable moments. You see, when you know where to look, you can see your enemy coming a mile away. Maybe it's your focus. Maybe it's your identity. Maybe it's your calling. Maybe it's your family. or your confidence, your relationships, your heart. Maybe it's your contentment. Remember Ephesians 6:11, and it says, put on the full whole, every piece armor of God, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Someone's out to get you. Your future and your life is at stake. And my prayer today is, Lord, open our eyes so that we can see. May we see the spiritual resources that God has for us. He's provided it all for us. May we put on each piece of armor every day. God has given us this powerful protection against the devil. We just need to put it on, because this is where the victory begins. Armour up, Glenvale.
The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn